Hello and welcome to Let Loose, Episode 7. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale. Happy to be with you, coming to you from the auxiliary offices of the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation today, and very happy to be joined remotely from a man who's back in his native planet, the planet Texas. He's the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchen. What's up, JK?
Are you jealous of my lighting? I got proper lighting over here from doing the Fox shows from here. So it's been a lot of fun to be home. I knew what was going to happen. I knew that the day I left Saratoga, I was ready to leave. And I knew that after about 30 minutes of sitting on my couch back home, I was going to start wondering where I was going to go to dinner and if Salevo was open. And now I'm deep in the missing of Saratoga.
It happens, man. But I'll tell you what, there's so much going on this weekend. It'll be a distraction to those memories, because between KEENELAND and Pimlico and BELMONT and California, there is just loads of racing action, most of it pointing straight forward to the Breeders' Cup. We're going to get into the 6 Grade 1 races happening across the country this weekend. But first, I'm going to tell folks about an incredible offer. And when I say incredible, I truly mean it this time, because so many ADW offers, even ones we've done before on the show, they're geared towards new players. Well, how about one geared towards loyal players who've had an account at TwinSpires for a while? That's what we've got for people today. Friends of the In the Money podcast can opt in and use the code ITM200 to get a risk-free win bet up to $200. Head to the TwinSpires app or TwinSpires.com and use the code ITM200 to get your risk-free $200 win bet now. Head to the TwinSpires offers page for all the details. We'll also make it easy for you and give you a shortcut. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/TwinSpires will take you there as well. JK, all this racing going on across the country this weekend. I'm going to ask you to pick one race you're the most looking forward to seeing, either as a fan or a bettor.
Well, I think that regardless of the time of the year, we have a handful of classics in this country that really get you going. And it doesn't have the same feel. It's not 2 weeks after the Derby, but I'm always excited to see the Preakness, excited to see Art Collector get back going. I thought he would have been extremely dangerous in the Kentucky Derby. Excited to see this kind of new version of Authentic. Authentic was meant to be a great horse earlier this year, and then he kind of went a little bit astray. And then his Monmouth win, the Haskell, wasn't overly impressive. And now, after winning the Kentucky Derby, he's kind of proven that he's a top-class horse. So looking forward to seeing that race. And then anytime my girl Newspaper of Record is running, I'm always excited to see her as well.
Good stuff. Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's start off with the first item on my rundown here, and that is the Preakness Stakes. Let's start with a very basic question. Is it just about BAFFERT here? Is this a case of Authentic being the horse with the best last race and 1,000 Words being the interesting challenger? Is the white-haired wonder going to make this his 8th Preakness Stakes, surpassing the record held by R. Wyndham Walden of 7 Preakness victories? He's currently tied with, obviously. JK, is it just BAFFERT?
I'm picking Authentic. So yes, I believe it is to a certain extent. Now, if Art Collector and Authentic were to switch post positions, I would switch my pick. I like the fact that Authentic is drawn outside. They're both tactical horses. I think it's going to be a little bit like Curlin and Street Sense. The 2 best horses are going to go 1-2 around there, and I think that's what we'll see. I just think that Authentic has that advantageous post. He showed last time that he can set extremely fast fractions. I think Johnny is going to ride the horse with a ton of confidence after the performance he had in the Kentucky Derby. So I think it's all about him. A little bit concerned about 1,000 Words, putting the blinkers on, changing things up in the middle of kind of his late 3-year-old year. I think that's a little bit curious. Makes me a little bit concerned about how I think he'll run. Look, I said I guaranteed 1,000 Words was going to hit the board in the Kentucky Derby, and unfortunately he didn't get to run in the Kentucky Derby. But I think he's got a great shot at hitting the board today, or Saturday. But I think it's just these 2 horses. I think it's Art Collector and Authentic. And in fact, in some other things I gave out a $100 play for this race, and I gave a $70 exacta with Authentic and Art Collector, and a $30 exacta the other way with Art Collector and Authentic, if somehow Art Collector can either get loose or get outside of Authentic.
Conspicuously absent from your remarks to this point, JK, was any word about Kenny McPeak's filly, Swiss Skydiver, who appears here after disappointing in the Kentucky Oaks, but having that bold run in the Alabama. Do you give her any count in here, or is she a de facto takeout reducer?
Takeout reducer. Look, it's coming from a guy who has a tattoo of Rachel Alexandra on his arm. I'm not picking a filly like Swiss Skydiver to win the Oaks after what I saw with Rachel Alexandra, her performance in the Oaks, and then on to the Preakness. I think I misspoke. I meant Swiss Skydiver in the Preakness. The other thing is Swiss Skydiver got beat by a 20-something to one shot, like a 15 to one shot. I just have no interest in her in this race. She's facing real racehorses in Art Collector and in Authentic. We saw what Art Collector did to her in the Bluegrass, turned her away. And I think this version of Art Collector is probably better. I think the longer the better for Art Collector. And I'm not sure that that Swiss Skydiver wants that distance versus these horses. I know she ran well in the 1.25 miles in the Alabama, but she wasn't facing what she's going to be facing on Saturday.
You are a well-known member of the Steve Asmussen fan club. I think you even carry the card around with you in your wallet. He's got 3 in the Preakness. Do you see any of them as genuine contenders, at least for the underneath spots?
Well, people with hair stick together, right? You know, it's a thing. You might not be familiar with it, but it's a thing that we like.
There's some hair under here.
You and Andy Sterling are the only people I pick on for being follically challenged, but that's because you guys give me such a hard time. You know, I think there's a world in which I liked Pneumatic for a long time. These are real racehorses, Art Collector and Authentic. The speed figures that they've run, the performances they've had, they're tactical. I just don't see any of those other horses turning the table on them. If anyone were to get the job done outside of those two, maybe 1,000 words. If the blinkers really wake the horse up, the pace heats up. I'm not going to fall for Mr. Big News. I thought last time was the time for him. You got a beautiful run from him, and often those late flashing Kentucky Derby winners continue to be overbet in their careers just because people remember seeing them run. I just don't see anyone else winning this race but Authentic or Art Collector.
You've already tipped your hand about how you're going to be playing this race vertically with your exacta weighted towards Authentic, including Art Collector. What about in the horizontals? Will you single and move on, or will you use both of them in the Preakness?
Yeah, you know, I got to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the undercard races, but depending on where I'm at in those situations, strong opinions, lockup races, so on and so forth, I'm going to look at this race one of two ways, where I'm going to pick up my value by just using one of them, which would be Authentic, or if I can have Authentic as an A and Art Collector as a B. I don't want to use them equally. There's no reason to give away that equity. I have a stance that I'm going to take it that Art Collector is going to be the second most likely winner of the race. So I'm going to focus most of my play around Authentic. Can Art Collector win? Sure. I'll have some savers in that regard, but I want most of my money, about 70 to 75% of my money, running through Authentic.
I'm more optimistic about Art Collector than you are. He is my top pick in the race. I'm hoping he can get his position going forward. Johnny Velasquez will gun, and he'll be able to flop outside and get that trip that you're hoping he can get. For me, in terms of how to play the race, I'll go mostly in horizontals. There'll be some, it's basically the reverse of you. There'll be some Authentic backups, but I'm mostly going to be going with Art Collector. I think Bonnie South looks like a good one to single in your late race horizontals in the Black-Eyed Susan, the race before this. So that's how I'm going to be looking at it, but great to hear your thoughts as well. JK, let's move out west slightly to Keeneland. We've got 3 grade 1s happening, and let's start by talking about the First Lady. This is a rematch, newspaper of record and Beau Recall. We have Uni in the mix as well, last year's Breeders' Cup Mile winner. What do you think is going to happen in the First Lady? Can newspaper of record redeem herself?
Well, obviously, COVID has affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And on the very bottom of that list of things affected are the fact that newspaper of record's rider keeps switching now. IRAD wasn't able to come to Churchill, so Javier rode. Javier now is going to be in New York, so Tyler Gaffalione rides. I think it's interesting to note just because she is kind of a tricky filly to ride. She's the type that, if you don't understand what she's going to give you at the end of the race, you might misplay what you allow her to do early in the race. I think IRAD finally figured out, I can let this beast roll and she's still going to kick home. And I'm hoping that Tyler will get that that same kind of idea in his head without having to actually feel it. Newspaper of Record is one of those horses. I like to call it the game on dude effect. And I'm sure some older horse players would find a horse maybe back in the day that was a little bit more of a promising name to use rather than game on dude. Not that he has anything to be embarrassed about, but it's the idea that these horses are better going 46 than they are going 48. The idea that you get them on the front end, you go 48, and they're going to have a lot of run left for you, it doesn't work for these types. Their power and their weapon is their speed. Newspaper of Record is better off going faster than slower, getting everyone else off the bridle, making a horse like Beau Recall or Uni move earlier than they want to because they see those red and white silks starting to open up from them. And I think that that's the way she needs to be ridden. Obviously, I'm a huge fan. I'm a fan of hers, and I have been for a very long time. But from a horse playing standpoint, I do believe that that's how her best race can be run. Now, last time at Churchill, she did get an easy lead, and a lot of people are going to say she got an easy lead. She turned it down. Well, she did, but she wasn't going as fast as I think she needs to go to beat other good horses. And I think that maybe we'll see that at Keeneland. I'm excited to see her run at Keeneland. She's a horse that's always seemed to kind of like a little give in the ground. And Keeneland's turf course, although it can get firm, sand-based, kind of has that more give to it, more of a European feel to it than some might see out in California or elsewhere. So, look, if you thought I was going to pick someone outside of Newspaper of Record, you clearly don't pay attention.
Let's move on to the Breeders' Futurity, JK. This race has really proved to be a key prep for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile over the years. Who do you think is going to get the money and go on as one of the favorites for this year's BC Juvenile?
Well, one of my favorite things about watching broadcasts of sports when I was on them, before I was even on them, was kind of getting some of that information right after the moment. And on August 15th, when Calibrate crossed the wire extremely impressively, Steve Asmussen was asked in the post-race interview, what about the, what do you think about the, where are we going to see this horse next? Are you going to run him in the Hopeful? Are we going to see him in the Champagne? And he said that day, moments after, he's running in the Breeders' Futurity 2 turns at Keeneland. I cannot wait to see this horse run. I think he's extremely talented. He was fast that day. He was down on the inside, not exactly where you wanted to be at times during the meet at Saratoga, and he had a lot left in the tank. I'm really looking forward to seeing this horse stretch out here. I think he's going to be extremely tough to beat.
I couldn't agree with you more. I remember having the thought about him for the Juvenile after that same race. Let's talk about the Shadwell Turf Mile. Chad Brown bringing a quartet to Lexington here. Phil D'Amato shipping in with Bowie's Hero. A lot of interesting angles in this race. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm going to go kind of to the stranger here. I've had enough of Without Parole and Raging Bull. Can they win? Absolutely. But they need things to go exactly their way. They have too many performances that just don't move me enough. I'm looking forward to seeing Analyze It back. Analyze It showed what kind of racehorse he was, and it took a champion type in Catholic Boy to turn Analyze It away a few times. And outside of that, Analyze It's been a pretty special horse. And his run in the Breeders' Cup, I think, is one that most will forget. He was, he got beat by Expert Eye, but he looked like he could have been a winner at that point. He had some time off, and now he shows back up. He's a tactical horse. He can finish. He's an older, more mature horse, and I liked his race at Monmouth in the comeback race. So for me, Analyze It will be my top choice. Like I said, I'm against Without Parole and Raging Bull. I've seen enough of their act. And Halliday is another one that I think is interesting. Obviously, he was going when things were going well for Todd Pletcher at Saratoga when he was winning the meet up there. And but he's another one that's fast and can get to the front end. And I think that something that's interesting to note about him is he had this kind of this moniker, this idea that he only wanted firm ground in South Florida. But in reality, he's 3 for 6 on 4 for 7 on turf that's not firm. So I'm not sure what the weather is going to be like this weekend, but if that ground in a fall day in Lexington has a little give in it, I think Halliday will appreciate that. So give me the horses that are going to be forward, Halliday and Analyze It. Analyze It will be my top pick.
I'll loop back to my opinion here when we get to our plays for Keeneland. And I'll ask you in the meantime, JK, how are you looking to play these grade ones? Is there one race of the 3 that we just talked about you're looking to dive into where you're looking to tie them together in some way, shape, or form? What's your thought on wagering from this far out?
Well, I can tell you one thing. One bet I'm really excited about this weekend, I encourage people to participate in, is this cross-country pick 5. All grade 1 races between Keeneland and Belmont. So I'll be definitely participating in that, assuming this will be in the mix. I don't have the list in front of me, but you'll figure it out. Whatever. And so this is one that I definitely want to get involved with. And then plus just all the races that they have at Keeneland on Saturday, I'll be involved in the pick 5 they have there as well. I love Keeneland's pick 5, 4 to 5 they pay. So it kind of helps you keep that money moving. You can also be more aggressive in your construction, understanding that there's that little safety net of 4 or 5.
That's a good point for sure. For me, one I'm interested in, to go back to the Shadwell Turf Mile for a minute, winning your in race for the Breeders' Cup, of course. Parlor, I think, is an interesting item for Mike Maker. Very difficult to run well over Kentucky Downs as testing configuration off a long layoff. I thought this horse ran pretty well there, and I think he almost has to move up with that race behind him. Fits on previous form and figures. I feel like the race is going to be run to suit. And with the 4 Chad Brown runners, I think this one's going to be a nice price as well. So I wanted to make sure I got a shout for Parlor in there as well. Can you see him at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I always pronounce his name wrong, I think, but Michael Huey actually sent me a Zulu Alpha mask, so I'm always rooting for the pink silk.
Good stuff. Let's move east to my home track when Saratoga isn't running anyway. Belmont, we've got a brace of grade 1s on offer, starting with the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. Boy, you mentioned before, JK, some horses who you're getting a little bit tired of their act. Does that apply to you, to this cast in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic? It did for me, making me want to go with a stranger, but I'm very curious who you landed on in here.
Well, I mean, I infamously loved Sadler's Joy back in the Bowling Green when he was disqualified, and the reason being the 3 turns at Saratoga. He had run so well at Belmont. I felt like we were going to get a nice performance from Sadler's Joy up at Saratoga, and we did on that day. Now we're back downstate where he will not be getting the 3 turns, and I will not be betting on him. Channel Maker is one that I think is interesting. Channel Maker, it feels that they've figured out what he wants to do. I mentioned again, talking about those interviews, Manny had said after the race, they had been trying to get him on the lead, and things weren't working out. They got him on the lead, and he was impressive, and I think they'll do the same thing here. They'll try to get him to the front end, and he runs well at Belmont as well. He likes it there. He's got some of his best performances and fastest figures that he earned at Belmont. In fact, one of his best races, his best lifetime figure was at Belmont. So Channel Maker's one for sure. And I thought about keeping this a secret, but I'll share it with you guys. This summer at Saratoga, someone came up to me very close to the Chad Brown operation, not Chad, but someone close, and said, there's a horse named Masterpiece that's really good. Wait for him to show up, and here he is showing up in a grade 1.
I like it. That's where I was going to go, JK. I figured they're just tipping their hand by having this one make this first start in the grade 1. I haven't seen a workout report, but the workouts look good. The form looks solid. We're on the same two. I just mentioned them in the other order. I'd put Masterpiece on top. Channel Maker, another I think you have to use from a pace scenario point of view. Hopefully they have figured this one out. Any cut in the ground for this son of English Channel would be a big plus. Doesn't look like it's meant to rain tomorrow, but we'll have to see what happens there. Definitely appreciate your thoughts on that one. What about moving down the card a little bit here, JK, to the event for 3-year-olds that goes as race 9, the grade 1 Belmont Derby. Winning, you're in action here as well for the Breeders' Cup Turf. Who do you think is going to win?
Yeah, and I think Domestic Spending, a lot of people are going to lean in that direction. I thought Domestic Spending's he's one of those horses that's almost undefeated. He's got that 1 3rd place effort where he kind of had that extremely wide trip, which I think probably led people to giving him another shot when he showed up in the Saratoga Derby. But I can't get past Guffaw. I thought Guffaw ran well that time. He was closing. He was running much better than his highly regarded stablemate, Decorated Invader, at that time. I thought that was a very tough race. Colonel Liam is a real racehorse. Domestic Spending, a real racehorse, and Decorated Invader, another one that's a real racehorse. And I thought that Guffaw was doing his thing there. Maybe he'll like the configuration at Belmont. Maybe that's what will help him get the job done, and he'll be a little bit of a better price than I'd expect you get on a Chad Brown Klarovich runner who won the Saratoga Derby in domestic spending. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to beat domestic spending, but from a pick standpoint, I'll go with Gaffo.
I'm going to reach to the same race, but go for the horse that ran third, one that I've liked since the debut up here in Saratoga, a day when I noted that I thought this was going to be a horse who was better going 10 furlongs and longer, gets that slight switch out in distance, stretch out, I should say, in distance today. This is one who finished right with the top two last time. I was a little disappointed to see 9-2 on the morning line. I was hoping this was a horse that would be 6-1 or better. We could be getting a little bit more of a price, but I just think he's got the right kind of grinding style. Not much to separate him from the top two that you mentioned, and hopefully a chance to get up there with a decent price on offer. We'll have to see what happens with the betting market, of course, but No Word is a horse who's always interested in me, and I wanted to see if we could get him potentially in the mix here. One other horse I did want to ask you about before we moved on, just the trainer we've talked about so much on the podcast over the years. How about A Journey to Freedom for Mike Maker? What do you make of this horse appearing in this spot? And is this one who could potentially be a contender, at least in the underneath spots of verticals?
So you're telling me that Mike Maker, who spent his entire summer at Saratoga, was paying attention to Del Mar, claimed a horse for $80,000, and is now trying the horse 1.25 miles for the first time on the turf in a grade one? I think you know the answer to that question.
You have claimed that you could put you and me in a horse suit and let Mike Maker train us, and you would consider betting on us. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna take that one as an affirmative. All right.
Look, I think he's up against it from a class standpoint. Yeah. But if you're looking for a horse to get involved in the exotics or to outrun their odds, A Journey to Freedom is one that I would definitely look at.
We're going to get to our best bets in a minute. We're going to do our best bets maybe a little bit differently, as long as this doesn't throw you off too much. We're eligible for doing this amazing promo offer we talked about before. The friends of the In the Money podcast can use the code ITM200, even if you're already a TwinSpires customer, and get a risk-free win bet up to $200. TwinSpires app or TwinSpires.com offers page. The code is ITM200. You can also get there through our website, inthemoneypodcast.com/TwinSpires. What horse are you going to use your $200 win bet on this weekend, JK? Are you inclined to go towards the shorter end of the odds spectrum and make the money get into your account that way? Or are you willing to take a shot with one of the longer prices that we've talked about on the show? How will you be playing?
Give me Calibrate. I am really looking forward to seeing Calibrate run the Breeders' Futurity. I don't think Golden Pal is connected to that race. That would be a fun little double to do, but he's earlier in the card. Looking forward to seeing Golden Pal, the turf sprinter that we saw up at Saratoga that was extremely impressive. But Calibrate for me, that's where my $200 win bet would go.
I'm going to go with Newspaper of Record this time. I love your case about why the form can be reversed. I think she's going to be ridden in the aggressive manner, as you pointed out, that we've talked about her wanting and needing all along. It's a great point about the jockey musical chairs due to circumstances going on in the world. Newspaper of Record for me. Hopefully we're going to take our ITM 200 win bets, turn them into a bunch more money, and keep things rolling throughout the day and throughout the weekend on our, on my TwinSpires.com account anyway. I forgot you're a Texas resident. You don't have one. But that aside, JK, I want to thank you for all your time today. Any closing thoughts for this episode of Let Loose?
I'm looking forward to it. Like you mentioned, 6 grade 1 races, a lot of them pointing to, if not all of them, pointing to the Breeders' Cup. It's right around the corner. Looking forward to the Breeders' Cup. We got Keeneland back, Belmont's running, Santa Anita. A lot of stuff going on. Looking forward to a fun weekend.
Good stuff. We'll close it out by thanking you, JK. I want to thank our friends at TwinSpires, TwinSpires.com, the TwinSpires app, our friends at Betting on Content, too. Special shout out to them for all the great help they do in putting these shows together. Most of all, though, I want to thank all of you, the listeners and viewers, especially those of you who get involved with this ITM 200 welcome back offer, whatever you want to call it. Going to be a great thing to have a lot of fun promoting this weekend. This show's been a production of In the Money Media and Betting on Content. Over at In the Money Media, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.